Okay, welcome back to this tip where I fix stuff. The last video ended kind of abruptly because my camera ran out of memory, and since it was already half an hour, I decided to split it there since we still got quite a bit left to do on this. I think at the end of the last video I was showing the end result of these. You can see I've got them pretty much cleaned up with the file, so they should now, like that little stub there should fit underneath that. So my next plan is I've got some epoxy putty. I'm going to try and mold around these little stubs in the shape of the original things, so that hopefully we can make them much bigger. And I also got some paint to paint the epoxy putty. So I'm going to start by molding that around there, and then obviously I'll have to like file and sand and everything to make it get to the right shape, but hopefully we can make a pretty close facsimile of these, and hopefully I did enough cleaning up on these that they'll fit inside. So I did already start putting the drum back together. I don't know if I showed that in the last one, but it's all the way over here. I had taken all of these off and started cleaning them. Well, not started, did clean them. I haven't cleaned these yet because I'm cleaning them as I put them back on. But these are all cleaned up. See, they all rotate really, really smoothly. Oops, I'm not showing it. Everything has been oiled, of course. So those should be pretty good. There is something that we have to pay attention to when putting this back together. So see this fat plate here with the kind of like cam thing there? That is the lock mechanism for these guys. So that divot in the cam, it would sit here normally against these two pins, and as you rotate it, it pushes this forward to lock these forwards so that you can't change the sliders when the handle is not in the home position. That is not keyed, that cam thing is not keyed on this shaft. So when we put it back together, we'll have to time that appropriately before tightening the nuts back down. I'm not sure if I showed everything coming apart on this, but basically at the end, as you can see over here, or maybe you can't see. On the end there was this spacer, and then these little brass shims, several of them there. Then drive gear, I believe this is for the drives the counter register. Then one nut, and then the direction ratchet latch, and then another nut. So what we'll have to do is use this thing to time, because this one is keyed, by the way. I have to use this thing to time the shaft to the home position, and then line up that cam appropriately with this, and then tighten the first nut to make sure that everything stays in time appropriately. So it's going to be a little bit of an annoying process, I think, because once you know the drum is in and the sides are on, it's probably going to be pretty tight at that end to have this on, plus get a wrench in there to tighten, putting some dirt in there, to tighten these skinny nuts. So we'll see. Hopefully it shouldn't be too bad, but it is something I'm going to have to do. So let me work on building these tabs here and see how they come out. Alright, so this is the final product I've come up with here. Can focus on that. So I've got the red one and the white one. This is just the first coat of paint. I'm not sure if you can tell, but like in some places it's kind of like not quite covering all the way. I'm going to repaint, or not repaint, but I'm going to put the final coat of paint on them once I've got everything back installed, because putting the cover back on, those little nubs have to squeeze through these little tiny holes at the top, so I'm expecting some of the paint to get scratched during that process. So I'll repaint or put the final coat of paint on once everything's all installed. I think it should be okay. They're not, 100% perfect. Here's a comparison of the original versus the reproduction. So they're not 100% perfect, but I think they'll at least be functional and be better than not having them at all. So hopefully that should take care of those missing. I started working on the carriage somewhat, and what I've done is I pulled this shaft out of here and lifted all of these up so that I can clean, in here and clean this shaft. These are those carry detents, so they just pop back and forth on there, but they rotate slightly on this shaft, and you can see that's pretty dirty. So I want to clean those up to make sure that that's going to be nice and smooth. I would have liked to take this shaft out as well and clean up in the top sections, but unfortunately these things here are detented by a little ball bearing with a spring behind it, and when I started taking the shaft out, of course the ball bearing and the spring popped out of this one, so that took me quite a long time to get that back installed, so I definitely don't want to repeat that process on all of these, so we're just going to have to clean from the outside and oil it, and hopefully that should be good enough. I'm not sure how they would have installed these at the factory, but I'm sure they had some kind of special tool that I don't have, so getting that ball bearing back installed and the shaft back through, because the shaft is the only thing that retains it. So basically what you have to do is, there's a hole in the top here, and that hole goes through an oval shape for it rocks on that oval shape, and then that hole continues on the bottom of the oval cutout, and that bottom hole is where the spring and the ball bearing go. So basically you have to insert the spring and the ball bearing through this top hole, keep them aligned and depress them through the bottom hole, and then keep them depressed in the bottom hole while you slide the shaft through. So it's quite an annoying process. It took me a while to get it back together, so that's why I'm not going to take all these other ones out. So I'll get that cleaned up. I've cleaned up the carriage tracks here. I still have to clean up the bottom of the carriage itself. And I also cleaned up this mechanism, so this is all clean and smooth now. It was pretty smooth before, but just cleaned up the door of it, oiled everything, so that should be good. I still have to clean these things somewhat, and of course clean all these pieces and put the rest of the drum back together. So I'm going to work on finishing cleaning this. I might take this shield off and see if there's anything I can easily clean in this section. I'm not going to be taking these digit wheels off here because you can see it's pinned on there, and it looks like it's probably a taper pin because I usually use taper pins for this stuff. So I'm not going to worry about trying to fight those out. These don't seem particularly sticky, so I don't even want to worry too much about them. I'll just put some oil on them and hopefully that should be good. So I'm going to continue working on that and turn the camera back on once we have something. Okay, so this is the second test fit after reassembly. The first test fit, I found that I had this drum rotated 180 out when I locked it in with these gears and put the ratchet on. But as you can see now, this is back in. This side I bolted down, this side I have not bolted down, because I still have to take this back out one more time to put this on, which is the spring for the zeroing mechanism. So there's a little hook on this pin, and there's a little hook right there on that stud that these two hooks on, and then that springs this back to the home position. So it has to go back on. But for the meantime, see now when I turn the handle, this rotates, you can see the segments pop out and then they fall back in right there. So you see they pop out there and then they fall back in there. Now if I move these all up to like 1, it's probably the 1 or 0, see they all start falling in, that must be 0, because see they all start falling in before they would engage with the register, which would be right around here. So see there they're out, and then there they fall back in before driving the register running positions. Now if I move these all down to a lower position, you see they all stay engaged. So like now they will be driving the register, driving, and they fall back in. So that's probably like 8 or 9, because most of the teeth would be driving the register. So I hope that makes it clear exactly how the they call these adapting segments work. And these things are the carry dogs. I think I've showed a little visual of how those work earlier. You can see they've arranged them in a spiral fashion. So it would drive the register then, and then like this carry would happen first, then this carry, and all the way up, all the way across. And they have to do that because like if you had a carry in this position, if all the carries were in one line and they all carried at the same time, if you had a carry in the first position, then that would drive the next row one position forward, setting that dog. But if that carry, the little dog here, had already passed that next position before the carry flag was set, then no carry would happen to the next column. So they have to have them staggered like that. So like the first one can carry, then if that carry causes the next position to also set a carry, then it'll get picked up by the next dog as it passes by, and so on all the way across. And the reason they have 2 of them is because for subtraction you go in reverse. So this is addition. I'm actually go in reverse. So oops, my ratchet is not. I think it's supposed to be a spring. I'll have to look into it. Anyway, so for subtraction, you can see we'd be driving here, and now we'd get the subtraction carries. But for addition, so we'd be driving there, and then we get the addition carry. So that's why I have 2. Because when you go one way, one set of carry dogs passes first, then drives, then the other set of the carry dogs passes. So, depending on which way you go forwards and backwards determines which set of carry dogs actually does the carrying for that operation. So I think we should be pretty good now on this, and you can see my repaired ones there. The red one looks pretty much in place, the white one not so much. These are much yellower than I was expecting when I was selecting paints at the store. Either way, maybe I'll get a different color paint then and repaint that one, or I don't know. Maybe I'll see if I can clean these up, maybe make them a little bit brighter or something. Either way, I think they will be at least functional, if not, perfectly appealing. So I'm gonna be satisfied with this so far. We'll have to see how everything goes back together with the case and everything. But yeah, so that looks good in my opinion. Like I said, I just have to take this back off one more time to put that on. This is kind of annoying to take on and off because of these ratchets in the back, and these are just the ratchets they lock the sliders in place. But they all spring forward, so you have to push them all back in order to get each carry pass, and then they also sometimes catch on, because they're spring loaders, so they spring forward. So if this, say, wasn't here, then it would spring forward into the drum, and then that blocks the drum from going in. So it's a little bit annoying to get it in and out, but it's not super terrible. And for tightening up the nuts on this, and what I did was I installed this like this, and of course this is locked, so the drum can't rotate. And then I also held on to the drum, so between my holding on to it and this mechanism here locking the rotation, I was able to get the nuts there good and tight. So that should be fine. This piece here, which I had mentioned before, that we have to get the right location for that. I was actually a little bit wrong about the shape of it. I thought that it would rest on both of the pins there, but it actually only rests on the front one. So I'm not 100% sure why it's shaped like that. I timed it so that the first divot in it rests on the lock for these guys. You can see the lock now, so you can't rotate these because the higher part of that cam is now pushing on this, locking all these in place. And then if you the right way, if you go back to home, you can see now they're free because the lever here is now sitting in the divot on that disc. And if you remember, there were 2 divots in it. I'm not sure what the point of the second one is. I have it timed so that the first divot is what this rod or this lever sits in. I'm not quite sure what the second one's for. It doesn't rest on this other pin here like I thought it would, so I'm not sure on that, but either way, it seems to be working now. If we run into an issue later, I'll have to recalculate, but for now it seems to be working. As far as the carriage, I reassembled this partially. You can see I put that rod back in there, and that just has spacers in between each of these carry flags. And then this piece goes in the back too, and this, I believe, serves two purposes. You can see it has cutouts in it. This is what that disc with the hole in it that I showed earlier rotates through these so that you can't move the carry when the machine's in motion, and you can't start the machine if the carriage is not in the correct location. So like that disc has a hole in it, and then like this slides through that hole, but the disc won't rotate unless it's lined up with one of these slots, so you can't start turning the handle unless the carriage is in the correct position. And then once you start turning the handle, the disc, would fill this slot, so you can't move the carriage at all. Also, there's a rod inside here. You can see this rod here, and that rod moves back and forth when you start a clearing operation. So I believe that also prevents you from clearing the register when the machine is in motion too, or starting the machine when the register is being cleared, because that rod would move and then block these holes as well. So I believe that's the point of that. The carry flags are a lot smoother now that I cleaned up the bottom part. I think I'll be satisfied for that. I still have to put this piece back on the carriage. This is kind of like a detent thing. You can see it has holes in it, and it has ratchets there. So these ratchets are what ride on that springy piece that comes up out of the base. That would be this piece. I've taken the spring off of it now, but before this was springing up, so that pin there goes in these as like a detent, and then these holes are what this pin, I'm not sure you can see it there. I'm not used to the Marchant bases being this heavy. Usually on the Marchants, they're aluminum cast base, but this one's cast iron, so I've worked on cast iron calculators before and they are heavy. I'm just not used to feeling this kind of weight to a Marchant, so kind of interesting. Like the Burroughs ones, the base plate alone is like 30 pounds or something. But anyway, I'm sure you can see. So you can see the pin there popping up. So that's what pops up in here and makes sure that it doesn't overshoot and like shoot the carriage past the next position. So like so this like pushes it, and then as it's pushing it, that pin rises up to lock into this so that it doesn't overshoot. So this still has to get bolted back onto the bottom of the carriage. I had taken it off because it was in the way of some screws that I needed to take off to disassemble. So anyway, I'm pretty satisfied with this so far. Hopefully it'll finish quite back together smoothly. So I'll have a little bit of cleaning up to do yet on the carriage, I think, and then reassemble all that, and then we can test some calculations. Of course, after I put this back on and bolt this side down, but anyway, I think we are doing good. Okay, so I've got the carriage and everything back on now. Both these sides are bolted down. It turns out that this carriage actually does, you can move it without using the ratchet thing. You just grab it, what's this stupid thing? You just grab it and move it. It doesn't need a release like the other machines did. Let me just clear out the register real quick here. I haven't put the crank back on the side yet, so I'll just clear it out this way. That's all cleared out. So now, let's see what position are we in. So we can put all zeros in for the time being, and if I turn the handle I should get nothing, except for an increase in the counter, which we did get. I can put in all ones. See, I've got all ones in now. If I turn it backwards, it should subtract. And it does. So, well, back at 0 now. So if I put in 1 and subtract, it should carry all the way over, make it all 9s. And rings the bell. So that looks like it's all working, and then I should be able to add it back in. No bell that time, I just didn't crank it fast enough. Usually you have to give it a nice fast crank for the bell to ring. Why are we locking up here? Yeah, so you have to ring it pretty fast to get the bell to ring. Ring that time. Should have something. Maybe a piece of paint or something farther. I thought I saw something moving. Oh, it's this thing. This, the clearing mechanism thing. Okay, that's fine. So, let's see, we should be able to do all ones. All ones. Okay, so let's try. We can do 2, 3. Kind of sticky line to look into that. 4, 5, 7. That should be everything. So now 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that looks like it's working. Okay, so far so good. The carries seem to work for. Oops, is that 0? Yeah, those are all back in 0 now. The carries seem to work for all the positions, and then it tests every single column and every single digit, but all the digits, like each position, seems to work. So that's good. So hopefully we should be pretty good with this now. We just have to put the covers back on. I think got a little bit of extra oil on some of the digit wheels, so I have to clean that off. But other than that, I think we are looking pretty good. So probably clean up some of these, clean up the digit wheels yet, and then hopefully just put everything back together and we can do a demonstration. So I ended up having to take this apart, and the reason for that is because I took the wrong piece off again and then everything fell to pieces. So the way that the clearing works, at least on this side, and I'm assuming something similar for this side as well, you can see those little holes in the top of this shaft here, and little ball bearings go in those holes. If I can do this without everything springing apart, there's a shaft inside here which is held stationary, and then this outer drum rotates around this stationary shaft. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's actually a groove cut in this shaft, like a keyway, so that when the shaft is like in the home position, the ball bearings sit in the groove and the wheels are allowed to rotate freely. Just sprung that one off, I'll have to fix that later. The wheels are allowed to rotate freely around the shaft. However, when you start to clear, this is held stationary, this piece starts to rotate, and as it rotates past the keyway, see, it pushes the ball bearings up, and then those catch. Let me just put this back in here so it doesn't swing all over the place. Okay, and then the ball bearings catch on the inside of here. You can see there's a little ramp type thing there. Right there, I'm not sure how it's going to show up, but right there, there's a little ramp type thing, and the ball bearings catch on that and rotate the wheels as the shaft rotates to bring them back to the 0 position. And what happened was I took this side of the carriage off to do a little bit of basic cleaning on this piece here, which is basically just like a detent to keep this shaft in its home position. And I pulled this shaft out without realizing what it was, and of course then all the ball bearings fell down inside this tube and were all loose in there. So I had to take this all apart in order to put the ball bearings back in the appropriate holes. It's kind of an annoying job because in addition to the spring tension on the clutch here fighting, because I'm not sure if you can see here, this is the ratchet clutch that allows this shaft to stay stationary when you turn the crank one direction, but rotates the shaft when you turn the crank the other direction. So that's got spring tension trying to push this whole shaft off the end. And additionally, there's little ratchets down on the bottom here. I'm not sure if you can see those. Those are the ratchets to keep the wheels detented, and that's what popped off of here. So if it popped off there. I should be able to push this down, and there we go. So you can see now that wheel has detents in it. That's what these things springing up on the bottom are. So you have to push these down to slide the wheels on, and each of those has an individual little spring on it. So if I took this shaft off and loaded it up with the wheels separately, then all these would spring up, and the springs wouldn't be aligned properly. So you'd have to try to align all the springs at the same time while you're putting the shaft on. So haven't really come up with a good way to do it. This way seems to be the most reliable, because I can put some of these on, and then this shaft will hold them from springing up to keep the springs in position, and just have to push each one down as I work the wheels past. But so yeah, that's basically how the clearing mechanism works, at least on here. I'm sure that it's a similar setup in that side as well. But I got all these parts cleaned up while I was in here. You can see the shaft is nice and shiny now. So I'll keep fiddling with all these little pieces to hopefully get them back on. And then this is the side of the carriage here. You can see there's a nice thick piece of metal there. That goes on last. Well, not last. That goes on, and then this goes on, which has a detent in it to keep the shaft from rotating when you're not actually activating anything. So we're going to keep working on this, hopefully get this back together, and I think that should be the last thing before putting the covers back on. So I got this all back together now. You can see here on the side, here's a slit in that plate there, and that's what holds the that central bar with the keyway in it in place to raise and lower the ball bearings as you crank it around. Couple things to note. One is, these brass bushings on the back here are not all the same size. You can see that the one on this end, see what am I pointing here? The one on this end over here is a lot fatter than the rest of them, and the one on this end over here is a little bit skinnier than all the other ones. So it's hard to see initially that one's skinnier, and when I first put this back together, I had that skinny one in the middle, and then of course everything was like all too tight because there was too much. The one I had here was too wide, and it was putting too much pressure on the other one. So that's something to pay attention to. This springy clutch plate here, you can see springs back and forth. I hope you can see that it's moving there. That's pressurized spring clutch plate, and what that does is when you turn the shaft one direction, it has a punch out that it engages with a flat spot on this shaft to rotate the shaft around. If you turn the crank the other direction, then it has a ramp that lifts it out of the way so that this stays stationary when you turn the crank the other direction. So there's two keyways on the shaft, and it's very easy to get that 180 out. And in fact, I did have it 180 out, so I had to carefully move this back a little bit to rotate that 180 degrees just to have it in the right position. But everything seems to work now. So you see, if I set all these, and they all ratchet nicely and smoothly. Set all these to some position here. And I'll get my pliers and I'll turn the crank here. I'll see that they all zero out, so that should be good, I think. And if I turn the handle here, see it counts forward on position. If I turn it backwards, it counts backwards on position. So hopefully that should be that all taken care of. I have to put this piece back on the back yet. This guy here is just like a cover. You can see how nice the paint cleaned up on that side. It looks almost brand new. It must be because like that sits down in here, so it's always shielded. It just slides on something like that. So I'll have to screw that back on, and then I think I'll be ready to put the front cover back on the carriage, and then hopefully the front cover back on the rest of the machine, and at that point hopefully we'll be done. So I managed to get all the covers back on. I did just scratch up the paint a little bit on these and these, like I figured, so I'll repaint those. I did have to do a little bit of tweaking on these. They were a little bit stiff. This one's, I mean, it feels pretty good. It may be rubbing a little bit on the side here. I think it feels pretty good. You can see they spring back. So when I first put the covers on, if I pushed them back, they would stay back, but now they spring back nicely. So I had to bend them a little bit, and I also carefully did a little tiny bit of filing on that one to reduce the friction against the side here, because I think the rods may have been bent a little bit initially, but perhaps from whatever action broke off these tabs originally. So add to that the extra thickness now, because I've wrapped that extra sheet of metal around here, so it's not exactly the best fitting here, but it feels pretty nice, so I think it'll be okay. Like I said, they do spring back, so there's not too much friction there. And the biggest thing is, now when these are all out, when you do the clearing, they're all clear. So that was the number one reason why I wanted to replace these, because before, I'm pretty sure I demonstrated this, if you did the clearing action, it missed those two and wouldn't clear them. But now, as you can see, it cleared all of them, so I'm pretty satisfied with that. So I'll have to tighten this down and put it back on that gigantic base plate. I actually kind of like it better this way, though, to be honest. I think it looks much more compact than when it's on that big base plate, because that big base plate goes like all the way out, or it's all the way, even off camera. It goes all the way out past the end of the crank, so it makes the machine look a lot bigger than it is, I think. I also have to put the crank back on there. So let me finish with that. I'll wipe down some extra oil I've got around here and there, and we'll do a demonstration. Alright, so all back together now. Move some stuff out of the way. So, can do 1, 2, 3. Adds in and it counts. That clear works. That clear works. That clear works. So we can, just add some numbers. Let's do 1, 2, 3. You don't have to do that if you're going to enter more numbers. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can do 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that's correct. Do something simple like 45. We can do minus 3, let's say. So subtraction works. And of course, there was nothing on the counter because it counts, the opposite direction for subtraction. So we're going to try a multiplication. So I shift this out 2 positions. Actually, we can grab it too. Ooh, hard to control that way though. Switch it out 3 positions actually. Ooh, I'll just use this thing. It's a little bit hard to control. It's easy to overshoot when you drag it. Anyway, let's do 625. I'll multiply by 625. So I want to see a 6 in that position. What happened here? Looks like my counter didn't count for some reason. That's interesting. And you poke that for a minute. That counter was all working before. I poked the wrong one because I can't get to that one. Alright, let me move this out and see what's up with it. Oh, it moves fine there. Let me try this position. No, there's something wrong with the counter now. So this position, it works fine. I'll count all day. This position also works fine. This position, though, oh, now it's working. That position is not working. It's working fine for me here. Let's try again. So this position, it goes. This position, it goes. This position. Alright, so let's try clearing it. Okay, so there's something wrong now with when you clear it, it gets interesting too that that position works fine. That position works fine. That position works fine. That position does not work fine. But if you what's something weird with the the thing that's supposed to move back and forth is not moving back and forth inside the carry lock slider there. It's not moving for some reason. Actually, it's moving a little bit, but not enough to actually make any difference. Let me see what exactly the issue is here. Unless this thing is just out of time or something. I'm probably going to have to take these covers back off. Because I think the issue was that I had this latch and this can with a divot in it installed incorrectly, and because of that it was not releasing the ball bearings back down at the appropriate time, and then that was jamming up the digit wheels. They couldn't turn past 0 in one direction. So I ended up flipping this around and flipping that around, and it seems like it works now. Clearing works appropriately, and I can move each of the digit wheels. I'm not quite sure how I didn't notice that before, because I was, clearing and playing with the digit wheels before, so I'm not quite sure why that problem didn't present itself unless I would only try to turn the digit wheels one position after clearing, which is possible, I guess. But let's put this cover back on and hopefully it'll work this time. Alright, so let's try this again. 6, 25. Move this out 2 positions. Now we're going to have 6. And then 2. And then 5. And piano 65 is correct. 625. Ooh. So let's do a division. So move this all the way over. And we'll do 355. Oops. 2 fall over. That's interesting. So I have to enter it on this side of the keyboard then. Just to throw this over this column, looks like 355. Usually you can't shift the register past the end of the keyboard, not the keyboard, but the input. So that's kind of interesting. I got 355 and 1, so we need to clear the counter. It's kind of interesting, this is actually backwards of how the Monroes work. On the Monroes, you turn it, forwards to clear the counter and backwards to clear the accumulator. On this one, it's the opposite. You turn it backwards to clear the counter and forwards to clear the accumulator. So it's an interesting difference. Anyway, now we want to do 1, 1, 3. So we'll start subtracting until we hear the bell. Hear the bell. So we add 1 back. Shift over. Too many times that time. One of the things I find kind of annoying about these, hand crank pendulum calculators is you keep having to hold the knob out as you crank it. Sometimes you think you're holding out and not holding out quite as far, and it hits against this, which is kind of annoying. But anyway, I think we are ready to continue here. As if you see me go forwards 2 cranks, because I actually went back 1 too many, back another crank against the bell, so I have to do 2 to correct it. Because it has that ratchet, so you can't, once you start a cycle, you have to complete it. You can't stop the cycle and go back. So, once you hear the bell, if you've already started the next cycle, then you have to continue and then go back 2 cycles. See, like that, I can't go back, so now I have to go back 2 cycles in order to correct. Oops, and we're at the end. So there we go. Slide our decimal point there, 3.141599292. That is correct. So I think we should be satisfied there. Of course, you can do square roots on this like you can do on any of these calculators. I'm not going to demonstrate that because I've demonstrated that procedure in other videos, and so have many other people on YouTube. But anyway, I think I'm satisfied with this. I think my fix turned out well. I am going to dab a little bit extra paint on these to fix where I messed them up during installation. But other than that, this should be done. Seems to work just fine. So hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.